There was a competition between two women, which was not friendly. And this is important to say. I'm sorry, we need to start talking about things as they were, right? According to the climbers who were there, according to the witnesses, all of them agree that competition was anything but healthy.
Conditions on Shishapangma were sketchy, cold, and windy with high avalanche risk. 50 commercial climbers and their guides hurried upward despite the warning signs of a nearly fatal avalanche just 2 days previously. The group included several who were vying to complete all 14 8,000-meter peaks. Foremost among these were Gutu and Gina, who were competing with each other to become the first American woman to finish this list. Others, including guides Nirmal Persia, known as Nimsdai, and Mingmar, were targeting personal records of their own, in this case completing all 14 of the world's highest peaks without supplementary oxygen. Many other climbers turned back at 7,600 meters, but the two rival American women, short-roped to their Sherpa guides, pressed upward. Each pair died in a separate avalanche. It was October 7th, 2023. Shortly afterwards, several veteran climbers and guides who were near the location of the avalanches reached out to Explorers Web to speak their minds at what they saw was a completely avoidable tragedy. They spoke frankly to Angela Benavides, a high-altitude mountaineering journalist of Explorers Web, whom I have here today on this episode, and I will bring her here shortly. First and foremost, 4 lives were lost. 4 families mourn, friends near and far, wondering how 2 of the most elite Sherpa on the planet lost their lives. Gutu was with Mingmar Sherpa lower down on the mountain. Their bodies are still on the mountain, buried beneath snow. And afterward, up above, closer to the summit, Gina Rzucidlo was with Lama Sherpa, known as Kristen Harla's partner and guide, during their historic climb of all 14 8,000-meter peaks in 92 days. Since these 4 deaths on Shishapangma, veteran 8,000-meter peak climbers and international mountain guides have begun reevaluating how commercial peaks are climbed and guided. Italians Mario Vilmo and Sebastiano Valentini said that everyone on the mountain that day knew that the upper section was risky because there had been a large avalanche the previous day. Vielmo and Valentini were in Camp 1 from the afternoon of October 5th through the 7th. They saw conditions evolve into a textbook avalanche situation. Fresh snow falling on the south side was blown over in the top to the north side, creating dangerous wind slabs. The ill-fated summit push, joint teams from Elite Expeditions and Imagine Nepal rushed up the mountain immediately after reaching base camp. As team member Naila Kiani reported, they arrived with their high-altitude gear on their backs, ready to start the climb without wasting a minute. There were about 50 climbers involved in the summit push and very few ropes. Teams had planned to fix some, but in the end, no one did. And as the teams reported, every client was supported by at least one Sherpa, and when terrain steepened, they progressed short-roped. Short-roped essentially means that the Sherpa ahead of them has a short rope and they put it on the waist of the climber behind them, and if the climber is weak or going slowly, they can literally tug on the rope. That's what short roping is. The 2 Italians decided against going to the summit because they thought the tough conditions warranted resting and waiting it out. What the Italians said was that the 2 women and their Sherpas took the wrong routes. They went straight into the most avalanche-prone sections, and as it says in the quote, you could tell it was a race because they both took different routes instead of collaborating to break trail at the same time, obviously trying to go faster than the other. Vielmo said it was impossible to know what caused the slide, the avalanche, but suggested that the climbers themselves might have set it off by climbing right through the slab and breaking it. As you'll see in my interview coming up with Angela Benavides, climbers reached out to her immediately after they reached Wi-Fi. After this accident, they were notably shaken by the events that had taken place. And now to my interview with Angela Benavides, who extrapolates the accident and what the ramifications are, and should there be a sea change to how commercial peaks are guided in the mountains, and the false belief that these mountains are actually safer now that so many people are making it to the top. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Musa Masala. They're a 501c3 nonprofit organization creating an adventurous outdoor community focused on safe, healthy, culturally aware wilderness activities while prioritizing projects for healthcare and education in Nepal. That includes dental and health clinics, a climbing competition in Kathmandu every November, student scholarships, and financial support for the Wangchu Sherpa Memorial Hospital. I've provided a link in the notes of this video so you can find out more about Musa Masala. They are awesome. Thank you, Musa Masala, for your support of Everest Mystery. Here's my interview with Angela Benavides of Explorers Web. Angela, you wrote an article on Explorers Web recently called "What Happened on Shishapangma? The Climbers Speak Out." We know that 4 people lost their lives endeavoring to make it to the summit of Shishapangma, which in the post-monsoon season has always been known to be very unpredictable, a lot of avalanches. Can you tell me a little bit about your article and why would climbers need to speak out?
Okay, well, that article, as you say, the headline is completely misleading because it doesn't explain the whole story about what happened in Shishapangma. And not all climbers are speaking out. But this article was published right after the accident, when the first group got out of the mountain, when they finally managed to cross the border from Tibet into Nepal. They got a Wi-Fi, and they decided to share the story. It was a group of climbers, all of them belonging to the same team. They were all members in Mingmar's Imagine Nepal team, right? This team was lucky enough to suffer no victims but they were close witnesses of the tragedy. And because, as I also always say, when people die on the mountain, there's a sheer tragedy behind it. It's not just a headline. It's not just the context, which of course is necessary. So this story comes from one of the climbers, Naila Kiani from Pakistan. I have a fluent contact with her, and I text her right after the avalanche and say, "Oh gosh, are you okay? Just wanted to know." But then it was her to say, "Yeah, and Naila, what happened? I guess you don't want to talk about it." And they say, "Let me talk to my mates." Yes, we have talked among us, and we are ready to tell our side of the story because, as I said, they know what they saw, right? And what they saw was an avalanche killing 2 members of the joint team, and then another avalanche killing other two. So first, these people were in shock. I have to say they were very brave to talk, and I try to be very careful. From that moment until now, and I'm sure in the near future, there's been like a wave growing of it's like a wave of a trend of opinion among climbers, especially very experienced climbers who know Shishapangma well, who have been in the last 20-30 years, favoring to talk about what happened, trying to explain what happened, trying to explain why, and making it a turning point so this kind of events don't happen in the future. Also, on many of the climbers who were on the mountain, what happened was absolutely unbelievable. And then you ask the veteran climbers and they say, of course, yeah, man, it's the north side of Shishapangma. Everybody knows it's so avalanche prone in the fall season. And there have been 2 days of snow falling, and all the snow, the fresh snow from the south side, had come to the slopes of the north side, and there were wind slabs, and then it was extremely cold and windy on the other side. I mean, it was like a manual situation for avalanches. But for the climbers who were there, all these climbers who were not self-sufficient, climbers who depend and trust their guides, for those, when the avalanche was triggered and fell, it was absolutely unbelievable. And say, what is going on? How is this possible? Well, welcome to the mountains.
So, boy, there's a lot between the lines here. So, and there's a lot we don't really know that's out there, but we know there's some speculation that there were two individuals who were, let's just even call it a friendly competition to go to the top. But that said, the mountain dictates what the next move is. It sounds like something other than the mountain was dictating the next steps. And the two groups were moving not even on the normal route. They weren't going to the ridge. They were cutting across in through an avalanche slope, which I've been in two avalanches, thought I was going to die in both of them. I know exactly how an avalanche starts, and a lot of times it's because a human being cuts a path right through it and sets it. It sounds like that is possibly what happened.
Look, the story you mentioned, right, what we published, it was the first direct testimony of what had happened, pointed to some facts. There was a big summit push. People rush up the mountain. They didn't stop in base camp as they went. They came from Choyu and they just start climbing all in one go. There was a competition between two women, which was not friendly. And this is important to say. I'm sorry, we need to start talking about things as they were, right? According to the climbers who were there, according to the witnesses, all of them agree that competition was anything but healthy, anything friendly. And this is important because an unhealthy environment may lead to the wrong decision making, right? So those are the facts. There were two avalanches, and sadly, 4 people died, which is a catastrophe. But that was not the end of the story. This is, in my opinion, this is the beginning of the story, and this is the beginning of my current investigation about what's going on. Because, okay, yeah, there was an avalanche, but what were these 2 women and the Sherpa guys doing, as you mentioned, in such avalanche-prone terrain? Who was leading them? Because none of the women was self-sufficient enough, and none of the women were alone. They were both guided by young Sherpa guides with a bright future. So that's why I say it's the beginning, and it's about time that we ask these questions, and it's about time that we try to explain and we listen to everybody who wanted to take their stance and give the points of view, so we can prevent these kinds of events in the future. But it was, I have to say, for so many young climbers and so many part of the audiences, it was an awakening. It was the realization that mountains are dangerous, that wanting it very strongly is not enough to keep you safe on a mountain, right? And avalanches don't care who you are, what you do, or why you're there. It's physics. The problem is there was no clear leadership. Sticking to the facts, this past summer on K2, on the 27th of July, in the only summit push on the mountain, half of the teams turned around. And it was the team leaders who gave the order for everybody to turn around because they deemed conditions dangerous. The other half didn't. So, and the summit rates have become the center of this commercial marketing in the Himalayan industry. But mountains don't know of summit rates. Conditions are what should be ruling on the mountains and not rates of success. That's my opinion. And my impression from my daily work, from all we have seen in the last 2 years, is that summit rates have become the center and the goal, and they have become prioritary before condition checking and, let's say, caution, right?
So all that said, I'm going off on a tangent here, but Angela, you said that you're doing a part 2 and possibly a part 3. Can you give us a little window into what that might be? Is it more details, more testimony from people on the mountain?
Sure. The first story we did was just factual. It was just gathering testimonies from direct witnesses. And we were not trying to analyze what happened because there were so many questions. So the second part is an analysis article about checking with several people who was on the mountain and who has been on the mountain, about leadership, about responsibility, about a mountain techniques, and about priorities, right? But again, as you say, and it's very important, we're not talking about good or bad people here. No one, as far as I know, wants to die on a mountain, right? We're not talking about bad intentions here, but probably what we have seen in the last few years is a process of mounting pressures, of mounting growing interests, and a larger and larger amount of people with no experience, with no previous life experience in the mountains, right? And a very aggressive marketing in which conditions didn't matter and in which turning around was not an option. That's right. And there's been, the rates of success in the last few years in the Himalayas, they have smashed these statistics. We have never, ever thought we would see so many summits. 72 people on Annapurna in one day. I found it hard to believe when we saw that 2 years ago. But these had a downside, and it's a false sense of invulnerability, right? It was a false sense of safety. And they say, okay, nothing is going to happen because there are ropes, we have plenty of oxygen, I trust my Sherpa 100%, and I know he's going to take me to the summit. But as I sometimes I say, when you hire an expedition company to do a mountain activity, and it doesn't have to be K2 or any other 8,000er, do you want them to take you to the summit or to take you safely back to base camp? That is a question that people stop making because they say both, but sometimes both is not an option. And I also think these young people who are inspired by these records in which it's something like, if you really want it, you can do everything, or if you trust your leader, you'll make it, and it's a question of strength of mind or whatever. No, strength of mind, you are nothing compared to a mountain. That's it. And these young generations, some of them have lost the sense of it. And then when an accident happened, they were like, this is not happening. This is not possible because I'm fit. I have my Sherpa, my whatever. No, you are nothing against the mountain. We're very small and mountains are very big.
As we've known for many, many years on the mountains, as long as mountaineers have gone into the mountains, it is known that it is all about the conditions, and the mountains make the decision. As soon as people try to impose time limits or their ambition upon the mountains, that's when trouble begins. Accidents like this will happen again unless people are able to take the time and assess the conditions. Peace out. I love you. Take care of yourselves. Be good to each other. Do a good deed, and don't look for anything in return. Make the world a better place one step at a time. Peace out, my friends.